Jalen Ramsey wants out of Miami, and he should. The Dolphins are a disaster. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to talk about guys who are going to the NFL draft who might have to wait a while to have their name called. We'll also talk about the Giants doing their final quarterback evaluations before the draft and why it smells like a little owner interference. But we'll start with Jalen Ramsey and the Miami Dolphins agreeing to search for a trade. Before we dive into that, though, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Luke, the big news drops. Jalen Ramsey wants out from the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins want Jalen Ramsey out as well. It's been
mutual parting of ways.
Right, a mutual parting of ways, which we know, and anyone who's ever dealt with a breakup knows, is never the truth, no matter how much you want to sell it. There's always someone who wants out just a little bit more. But with that being said, we're going to get to, landing spots for Jalen Ramsey. But first and foremost, for the Dolphins, there is just a massive culture problem there with Jalen Ramsey now. Tyreek Hill is always acting out, whether you want to call it real, fake, whatever. It's just always something with him, where they're at as a team right now. And my guy Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins thinks that it's a culture problem for the Dolphins.
The most important thing you can do organizationally is get your internal evaluations right. And that's proactively getting out in front of offering contracts extensions to players and getting deals done and anticipating the curve of the salary cap and the curve of salaries at that position. And there's some ways in which I think the Dolphins have got that right. Like, I say what you will about Javon Holland, the way the last 2 years have gone for Javon Holland in Miami would not have been a player I would have been interested in giving a long-term contract to at the kind of dollar amount that he got a long-term contract. I think they got that evaluation right. But you have Robert Hunt and the guard market as a whole. You have Christian Wilkins. So evaluations like that, Andrew Van Ginkel, you try to operate with some level of grace and scheme change and all that, but at the same time, you drafted these players. And in lieu of giving those players contract extensions to have second contracts with the team, the hired guns you brought in from outside get not one but two bites of the apple at a contract deal, including re-upping when they're in the top 10 of the salary at their respective positions because they wanted more. And you talk culturally about what needs to change. I think this is a step in the right direction for those kinds of players not being in the picture.
I mean, that is a fantastic point. If it draft and develop is the key to sustained NFL success, you can't have the guys who get drafted to your team look in the locker room and say, oh, the other guys like me weren't rewarded and guys from outside the building were rewarded. This is also could turn into a TJ Watt, DK Metcalf, Pittsburgh Steelers conversation, but that's a topic for another day. But again, I think Kyle makes a great point there. Culturally, how they paid people is a bit of an issue. And I know, Luke, you're willing to go even harder on Miami and what they've done recently.
Yeah, have they tried tanking? Maybe they should tank again. Do you think tanking would work? I was told incessantly and annoyingly for years that Miami was doing it right. They were taking their medicine, doing the reset, getting out of the 8-8 problems of being a good, not great team, get the good draft picks. Well, they were god-awful dreadful for years, including a year where we now have like court-mandated evidence that Stephen Ross wanted Brian Flores to tank on purpose as head coach.
Literally.
All right. should refund 2019 season ticket holders. I mean, their fans deserve more than that, right? What did that tank get you? A 6-year run that was worse than the Kirk Cousins Vikings. 2 7 seeds, no playoff wins. That's where tanking gets you. So I feel pretty comfortable now declaring that the two most visible tanks of the last decade, which were the Browns with Sashi and this Dolphins thing, were utterly catastrophic and have brought their teams to these horrible quagmires where, the Dolphins are right now and they need a full reset, and where the Browns are now and they need a full reset. Tanking doesn't work, and I'm sick of hearing people suggest that it's some ticket to easy street. No, it doesn't work. The Dolphins tanked. They're getting punished for it now. It's super cool to lose in the short term so that you can also lose in the long term. You deserve everything you get, Stephen Ross. I do not respect you.
Boom. Mic drop. The brain on fire. Love that. Listen.
My brain is on fire because I can't fathom why people still think losing in the NFL is good.
Okay, it's a strong argument. I mean, I think that there's an argument to be made that tanking works if the goal is to get better draft picks, but tanking doesn't work in the long term if you're trying to build a real sustainable contender, because it's just really who's the bright shining star of tanking in the NBA? It's the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid, his nickname is The Process, because trust the process was the motto that was sold in 2012 in Philadelphia, that we're going to tank. And
that guy's like long fired, right?
Yes. It's Sam Hinkie. He was fired a long time ago. Joel Embiid has been one of the biggest disappointments in NBA history recently because of the injuries. And the karma is what gets you when you tank. You might get the number 1 overall pick. You might get the picks that you're searching for. You might get the outcome that you desire when you tank. And you may lose those games. But we've seen over and over, not just in the NFL, but in American professional sports, that if you lose on purpose, outright lose on purpose, these sports gods will not reward you with what you ultimately seek. You may get short-term glorification in your number 1 pick, but you will not get the
You get one exciting offseason where you get a lot of hype.
You chose poorly. You chose poorly. And listen, I've pushed for tanking, and I've talked about the Titans losing games and doing it on purpose and this and that. And at the end of the day, you do realize that the culture that you build while trying to lose will linger even when you're trying to win. I think that's the valuable lesson here.
For sure. And just how bad you have to be the worst team in the league and get the number 1 overall pick, or the number 5 overall pick, as it were, for the Dolphins. And look, if you want to tear everything down and lose so much that you get fired and set up the next guy with all those draft picks that you got, there's a chair in every hotel room for you. It's I don't respect it. But in terms of Jalen Ramsey himself, I want to home cook a little bit. I actually think this is absolutely a thing the Vikings are going to look into. The Brian Flores connection.
I agree with you. You're 100% right. There is connective tissue there. And quite frankly, we need to talk about some potential Jalen Ramsey landing spots. And if you think the Vikings are a good one, well, that's one of the teams I had written down as well. So we'll discuss the Vikings as an option and some other NFC contenders who I think should be in on Jalen Ramsey as well. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. And that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. It's LinkedIn's new feature that can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture, and you're going to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Jalen Ramsey and the Miami Dolphins situation. They will certainly be looking for a trade, and it sounds like a trade could materialize by the NFL draft in a little over a week. So with that in mind, what are some potential landing spots for Jalen Ramsey going forward? Luke, as our host of Locked On Vikings and our resident NFL expert, why do you think that Jalen Ramsey is such a good fit with the Minnesota Vikings? And I basically agree with you, but since you're boots on the ground, you tell the people why this makes so much sense.
I mean, you know, there's the Flores familiarity and stuff. There's Kevin O'Connell familiarity. There's
so many layers of connective tissue.
Yeah, right. Like there's a lot of fit there, and those guys love to go for like dudes they liked from before. And I know that Kevin O'Connell thinks really, really highly of Jalen Ramsey, just from like a reporting angle, but also, hey, they need a corner, and the Vikings loved a washed corner. Oh my God, they love a corner who's old and was good before, but isn't anymore. Oh my God, they have to have a washed corner. I'm still waiting for them to like grab Xavier Howard somewhere. Like they love it.
Stephon Gilmore is available.
Stephon Gilmore is still available, and a return is absolutely not out of the question.
Yeah.
But he'll wait till like middle of camp or something. He's not going to go through a training camp. He's earned that. But elsewhere in the NFC North, I was going to say the Packers. I mean, they're looking at starting unironically Keyshawn Nixon right now. Like that makes a ton of sense for them too.
I agree. Before we go to the Packers, though, just what is the cornerback situation for the Vikings, and how would Ramsey fit in that?
Yeah, so if they had to play a game tomorrow, they would have three people that you probably wouldn't laugh at, but it would probably be one of the lesser groups in the league. Byron Murphy, very excited about him. True cornerback one. Love that dude. He's not the issue. The issue is they've got Mekhi Blackman, a third-year player who missed his second year with an ACL and was, rookie up and down. No idea what to expect from him. And Isaiah Rodgers, who also has kind of been up and down depth charts. Those guys are more like rotational depth. Like they're going to compete to start, and I think they've earned the ability to compete with each other to start. But right now, you're starting both of those guys. And then like Jeff Okudah's corpse is also on the roster. I don't know what you're going to do with him. So it's like they definitely need another person that you can trust to do the right thing. Drafting a corner is very much one of their big draft needs right now. And Jalen Ramsey wouldn't stop that just because he's old. But their room is like one guy away from feeling comfortable. Right now, they're looking like great odds to be like the 26th best room.
Well, hey, listen, you can always get a little bit better, but I agree it would make sense for the Vikings with all the connective tissue. You did mention Green Bay, and I think Green Bay is a solid fit there, especially, the Jair Alexander situation is ongoing. Maybe there could be a natural swap there. Also, you make a great point. Keyshawn Nixon made his bones as a returner, has been an okay cornerback too. He had some crazy comments, I believe, earlier this offseason about being cornerback one for Green Bay. And a lot of people are like, you shouldn't necessarily even be a certified starter. So what are you talking about? Now I get believing in yourself, but at the end of the day, with the Jair Alexander situation likely not ending with him being on the Packers next year, a swap for Jalen Ramsey, and there maybe not a direct swap like Alexander to Miami and Ramsey, but in some sort of fashion, bring Ramsey in, Alexander out. That could make sense for Green Bay as well. And I think with the Vikings, I think a point that I would make for both of these teams, they need more alphas. They just need more. They just need more dog mentality. And I know that seems so reductive and it's like so simple.
No, I get it. I think that really goes more for the Packers. Like the Vikings don't want that. They're like a Beach Vibes team. They don't want the like Stephon Diggs attitude. But I kind of feel like the Packers do. And would always love that kind of guy. And look, if you're replacing Jair Alexander with Jalen Ramsey, you're kind of swapping out one head case for another. But like,
yes.
But they like that. The Packers like to embrace those sorts of alpha guys. Not that the Vikings don't have like super brash, inspiring, motivating personalities, but they're a Beach Vibes team. I don't know if they're about that.
Well, Beach Vibes don't vibe with me as a human being. That's probably why I'm like, I don't like the smell of the Vikings. Yeah, you're probably right. They're just like I didn't like the
Watch
Rams
what happens when they get a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter. They kind of don't step on your throat. I've been saying it on Locked On Vikings.
Right. It's the killer mentality, man.
Yeah, they don't have it.
Shout out Kobe, that's my guy. That's what I was raised on. So but I see what you mean. It's just a different vibe. Whether I don't respect that vibe or not, it still is a valid vibe. I think San Francisco is another option as well. I think with what they've lost, Shavarius Ward in the secondary, Hafunga, they lost in the secondary as well. You look at where their secondary's at right now. Trey Brown, they brought in as a free agent, but Renardo Green, a guy who I liked out of the draft last year, Lenore as well as another guy. I think that Jalen Ramsey even could maybe play a little bit of safety at his next stop. Like this is a common thing we see from good cornerbacks as they age. They're still really good, instinctive players, but they maybe don't have the same thing that they had to play on the outside with the new young wide receiver. So they make a move to safety. I think Ramsey could be used in that star role with maybe a little bit more safety responsibility than corner responsibility in the slot safety. I think that's what he should be looking for going forward. And I think that could fit in San Francisco and give them a well-needed pop of attitude.
Yeah. So something to keep their culture from falling apart.
It would just make it feel better. You know what I mean? Like whether that move is like this big game-changing move, adding a high-level, well-known player like Jalen Ramsey who still can be used and give you a good play, like I think that would be exactly what San Francisco needs to kind of right the dark cloud that's over their organization from this offseason.
And one snag with that, unfortunately, is the money. Jalen Ramsey has 25 mil of his contract is guaranteed. And it's, over a bunch of years, these 4 years.
$4 million was paid by the Dolphins. So it's $21 million for whoever takes
21 is left. Okay.
You could give him new money and mess with that, right? I mean, like that's always
you could. Yeah. But right now he's signed through 2028. So there already is a contract structure. You'd probably want to shorten that contract structure if anything.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're paying him, a 10-digit number through his age 35 season. Like that's not right. And there's already void years on it and stuff. So it's not that reworkable of a contract. You kind of have to be able to take it on. And the Vikings and Packers are in a place where they could do that. It'd be a little uncomfortable. And it's certainly an inefficient contract. The Dolphins are in hell. This is a nightmare for the Dolphins.
Well, it's stupid to do that.
And that's why I'm going to guess that this dude does not go for a high draft pick. This is going to be one of those, oh my God, how did they get Jalen Ramsey for a 6th round pick kind of things? And the answer is going to be because the contract is a doggone mess.
Yep. It's like Deebo Samuel. Like, I know that we know Luke, but there are a lot of people out there who reacted to, wait, why did Deebo Samuel just go for a 5th round pick? Like, I had friends in group chats. Like, what is going on? You know what I mean? And it's like, well, the money, you know what I mean? So I think it could be very similar to that. Is there any other team, maybe even an AFC team, doesn't have to be, but any other team that kind of pops out to you as an option?
Yeah, I was actually thinking the Eagles. The Eagles lost a couple, they've got their young corners that they're
GJ. You know what I mean? Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They traded him
that they're really excited about, right? They've got their Quinyon Mitchell and they've got their Cooper DeJean. So like they've got their guys that they're excited about. But the thing about Howie is he never is afraid of redundancy. Like the idea, they already have corners. That has never stopped him before. That dude has had 8 Pro Bowlers on the D-line before. Like it's never going to stop them. They are a team that I basically always trust just like blindly to make the money work. Even if they don't have it, they'll figure it out. They always do. And it feels like the kind of Howie's such a name, kind of guy, Yeah. I know that's like really surface level analysis, but also having a dedicated outside corner, which is where Jalen Ramsey, I think, has been at in his career, would be able to let you get a little bit more creative with Cooper DeJean in a way that I think Vic Fangio would really want to do.
Well, here's what I would say. Ramsey has played outside corner, but when he was with the Rams, he played the star role, the slot hybrid, played some outside, played some slot and things. So, and again, this is my personal opinion. I think as he's aging, being more in the slot and even having some safety responsibilities, like if he can be a top-down safety and use those ball instincts and use his eyes and his knowledge, I think that's the path forward with Ramsey at his next stop. So Philly, schematically, I see what you're saying, but I don't think he can play outside corner like that. I just don't. So
that role exists. You know where Brandon Staley, the defensive coordinator that had him in that role, where is he at now? San Francisco.
He's with the Saints. Oh, Brandon Staley, Saint. No, wait a minute. Brandon
Oh,
Staley?
no, New Orleans Saints. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's with the Saints. Yeah. So
My bad. He was with San Francisco before.
Yes, correct. What I was going to say is Staley does some things similar to Fangio. So
yeah, they're the same scheme for sure. Yeah.
Right. Maybe there is a clear usage pattern there from that, and that could make Philly a more logical fit. I think there are a ton of possibilities here. With the money, though, you're right. It does complicate things. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But speaking of how it all plays out, the Giants are doing a lot of work on the quarterback position here in the final 10 days before the draft. And it does smell a little like owner interference. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, the NBA playoffs are here. Go Lakers. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel, FanDuel is going to let you place a $5 bet and give you $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love FanDuel. It makes betting so easy. The app looks so good, too. I love the way it tracks my same-game parlays. And speaking of same-game parlays, three-pointers, steals, assists, FanDuel has so many different ways for you to bet your favorite players' props. And even after the game tips off, you can combine all those live prop bets into a same-game parlay. Boom. Also, of course, you can back your favorite teams with spreads, money lines, over-unders, all of that. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Again, that's FanDuel.com. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Jalen Ramsey deals. We talked about landing spots. We talked about the Dolphins being an outright disaster at the end of the day. But do want to move to some big news we're getting from the New York Giants. And they're doing basically another tour de jour of all of the quarterbacks. Shedeur Sanders is having a private workout on Thursday. Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe. I think Tyler Shook is a guy, which I'm going to do an episode soon on guys that I'm lower on than other people seem to be. And Tyler Shook, what are we doing, man? I do not get it. But anyway, another guy who, honestly, I'm a little bit lower on than consensus is Jackson Dart. And the Giants are looking at Dart. And recently, Patricia Traynor from Locked On Giants had our host of Locked On Ole Miss on the show to talk about Jackson Dart potentially being with the New York Giants.
System-wise, I'm not 100% sure because my only frame of reference is the Lane Kiffin system, which traditionally is not a great system to develop quarterbacks into the NFL. I mean, that's just the reputation that's been deserved. But this season was a little bit different because he had Joe Judge as an analyst on staff for the course of the whole year, which means there were some NFL principles that were probably taught to him that maybe Matt Corral did not get. So I think we need to go into this situation saying that, hey, this could be a little bit different. We understand the reputation as before, but Jackson Dart is not Matt Corral. And I think it's important that for some reason, if he falls to number 34 and ends up with the New York Giants fans need to realize he's not Eli Manning either. He's a different quarterback, but Jackson Dart might be the best quarterback in the entire country. As far as this year, I would take him over Cam Ward. I would take him over Shedeur Sanders, my opinion only. But what Jackson Dart does really well is he is completely all in.
I'm glad that Jackson Dart is all in. I am all out on Jackson Dart. Okay.
Got him.
To say, if you want to say that Jackson Dart will be the best quarterback in this draft class, that's your opinion. I have been wrong on draft players before. I'm going to be wrong again. Maybe that's true. Maybe Dart learns how to run an NFL offense or play quarterback. Maybe that happens. But right now, he's just a guy who scrambles around all the time and has a big arm. And I know that gets people excited because it's like, he's got pretty good athleticism. He's got a good arm. He makes some crazy throws, man. He really does. But he has never, at least in college, I don't know what he did in high school, but He never played NFL football or anywhere close to real quarterbacking in Ole Miss's system. And Cam Ward led led college football at 39 touchdown passes last year. He was a Heisman Trophy finalist. To say that Jackson Dart was a better college football quarterback last year is crazy to me. You want to talk about what they'll be in the draft, that's fine. But if you're the Giants, Luke, and the owner has come down and said, you're taking a quarterback at number 3 overall, I'm making you or I'll fire you right now. And you have Sanders, Dart, and Milroe. Who are you taking at 3? You have to. It's gun to your head.
It's for sure Sanders. He's got to be the most like, pro-ready one. For sure. I don't know if I've heard anybody have a take other than that. I think it's more about the Giants taking not a quarterback at 3, Abdul Carter at 3, and or Travis Hunter.
You just heard someone have a take like that. You just heard that take.
Okay, well, look, Locked On Ole Miss is different. All right, he's allowed to. Right. But it's more about that, and then trading back up into the first, like at the bottom of the first, for like Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe. So like those two guys being in the green room at the draft, it's going to be really interesting around pick 25 when you've got teams like the Browns, the Giants looking to maybe trade up. Will one of those guys go to the Saints at 9 now that Derek Carr is dead? I don't know. But I don't know a lot about Jalen Milroe. For Jackson Dart, for what I've watched of him, my experience with him was weird because the most I watched him before this year was when studying Jonathan Mingo a couple years ago and thinking, man, who's this Ole Miss QB? He stinks. He's really hanging his dude out to dry. And then I just kind of carried that opinion for 2 years. And I was like, you know what? I should probably check on that and see if he's grown. And he definitely has.
He definitely
has. The thing with the Lane Kiffin system is people are going to write basically every Ole Miss quarterback off because of Matt Corral. And I don't think that's necessarily
every offensive player, Luke. Since Lane Kiffin took over, which means no DK Metcalf, no AJ Brown. Name an Ole Miss offensive skill position player, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. Name any of them who are any good in the NFL.
If there was one, I wouldn't be able to name it. That's terrible that kind of game.
Quinshon Judkins, who transferred to Ohio State. If you want to count him because he went to Ole Miss, he's going to be drafted. Maybe he ends up being good. But like Trey Harris out of Ole Miss this year, no way, man. I can't take him in the top 60 picks. You just can't trust any of those guys coming out of Ole Miss. And Dart is on that list for me. Like I would rather, if Shedeur Sanders was not available, I would much rather take Jalen Milroe and bet on developing a 22-year-old hard-nosed kid with great football character who's willing to do anything for his team. I will take Jalen Milroe all day over Jackson Dart. Like it's not even a question, but if you got to take one of those quarterbacks in the top 3, you're right. It's 100% Shedeur Sanders because if you protect him, you at least know that you're like, I think Shedeur Sanders can come in right away and be a tier 3, tier 4, low level starting quarterback right away as a rookie. You know, like
there's like a 30.
Giants, that's what you want.
There's like a 30 pick difference, and a 22 pick difference in consensus ranking between Shedeur and Jackson Dart. It's a pretty hot take to put Jackson Dart above Shedeur Sanders, which I can respect a hot take. But for Dart, to me, I think what you're hoping for is that you get a little bit more pro readiness than it looks like than you got with Mac. The problem with Matt Corral is that he was ass. Not that he was in the wrong system. It was that he was bad at football. Like you could put him in a better system. He would have been just as ass. Like that's not, I don't think relevant.
All right, Luke, we've hit our allotment of cuss words. All right. He wasn't good.
He was bad. But like, I don't think that that's relevant to this. What I see from Jackson Dart, I do like the way that he works his feet in the pocket. I like the way that you get real good at RPO footwork in a system like that. And that is an NFL thing. You got to be able to do that. Yep. And for example, looking at, we talked about this a week or two ago with Cam Ward, when he does his RPO footwork, he doesn't always do it the way that NFL QB coaches want you to. It works for him. He can just kind of athlete his way through it, but it's going to be, you're going to lose those milliseconds that don't matter in college, but do matter in the NFL. And that just extra little bit of precision. So that's something that he might need to have to work on in the next level. Absolutely. It's a consideration that you don't have to worry about with Dart at all. You want to call an RPO, he's got you. I watched a couple games and I was like, I don't really see what everybody's so mad about here. This seems like he's just like a guy playing quarterback fine. And then, so I asked and I was like, well, what's the deal? He's like, you got to watch the Florida game. So, okay, I'll go watch the Florida game. And I watched the end of the Florida game, and that was such a disaster.
Anytime that it's on him, anytime he has to elevate, anytime it's like, okay, we can't just win with this scheme. You got to go out and do it. He just doesn't.
Crack like an egg.
Yes,
now, those interceptions, you could argue all of them were not. You could make an argument for all 3 of those interceptions that they weren't his fault, that there was a miscommunication, the wide receiver did something. But the way I understand the air raidy stuff Lane Kiffin does, I would not make that argument. Essentially, you will have reads that a wide receiver is supposed to break off a route. If they feel coverage on top of them, they're supposed to turn around and get it, right? And Jackson Dart just threw it as though that receiver wasn't going to turn around. He turned around. So you go, oh, miscommunication. Whose fault is that? But knowing that what I know about that system, I do think it's Dart's fault, that he was predetermining, that his brain just sort of went into pressure mode.
Never has to read coverage. He just, it's so clear cut what he has to do.
Well, he has to read the same options as the receiver reads. He has to be on the same page. That's that stuff. It's run and shoot adjacent.
That is what the NFL is. The NFL is, we have to be on the same page and read stuff correctly at the same time.
Right. And so when the pressure ramped up and he lost that ability, deep concern, big flag, got to talk to him about that. Yeah. But I think I would caution looking at, RPO.playbook and saying, well, he can't be an NFL player. Because if you do that, you're taking Cam Ward out too. And I don't think that would be fair to either of those guys.
Your Reddit brain, RPO.playbook. Hilarious. Yeah. I love it. Well, let's just say this then, since we're here. I think that Sanders would be a good fit with New York. I think Jackson Dart would probably be a good fit with Kellen Moore because he could probably get the most out of that quick RPO stuff. He could build that into the offense more easily than maybe some other coaches would do it. I think that would be a great fit there. But I think that Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, I still think that Milroe is the guy who has to wait longer on draft night. And when you talk about the people who are invited, the 17 guys or whatever, you look at Milroe, you look at Dart, those are the 2 dudes where I'm like, are they going to get drafted? I think it's more likely now because if the Giants are like, okay, we're going to take a quarterback at 3 now because the owner said we have to. Well, that means that Dart and Milroe are both going to go higher than they would have gone otherwise if it were Abdul Carter at number 3. So I still think, though, that Milroe is the least likely. But I think my guy Joe Marino, I think, pointed this out on a recent episode of NFL Scouting, Locked On NFL Scouting. But even if Milroe hasn't been promised he'll go in the first round, even if his agent doesn't think he'll go in the first round, by accepting the invite, it makes other teams feel like, oh, someone told him he's going to go in the first round. So you are using that,
baby. I love it.
To artificially inflate his draft value, even if it's not real, but perception is reality. But still, even with that said, I will say that I think Jalen Milroe is the guy out of the 17 guys invited who I think has the best chance to be sitting there waiting the longest.
It's going to be a weird back of the draft. I'm really curious to see how the last 10 picks go. After Pittsburgh, nobody needs a quarterback. There is no team that's interested in drafting a quarterback.
But a lot of teams could move up is what I think will happen.
Could move up, but who are you trying to leapfrog, right? You're only going to be competing. Like the Browns and Giants will only be competing with each other.
Yes.
So
who can move up further. Correct.
And that makes for a harder trade environment. I would love for the Vikings to be that team. I really want them to trade down because I think this draft is kind of doo-doo stinky. And I want to get more bites at the apple, right? I don't think there's anybody I'm super sad to trade past at this level.
I agree.
But for the same reason, why wouldn't the Browns and Giants, if they wanted to play chicken with each other and sit and wait, it could be Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe at 33 and 34.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they could communicate to each other, we're not going to trade up, but what if they want the same guy? Then
it's a big bluffing contest. That's why it's a game of chicken.
Man.
That's why I'm so fascinated by it.
Oh man, I can't wait for the draft. We're, 8 days away now. Cannot wait for it to happen, man. We've been treading through this little mini dead period here, and I'm ready to get some answers on what these teams are going to do. But with that being said, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain Luke Braun. As I tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.